So, welcome everyone. We are here tonight to talk about the motherhood journey. So, what does that mean? What is the motherhood journey? It means whatever it means to you. My personal journey I shared on social media yesterday, and today, that there is no one way to become a mom and to be a mom. It's a very personal journey and one that you yourself have to decide how you're going to approach it. I think that sometimes we're looking for the answers and we're looking for ways that we want to systematize things and we want things to be just perfect, and we have this idyllic vision of what this is supposed to be and look like, and unfortunately it's just not the case. It's something that we all have to approach with our own personal values in mind and being able to really support each other through
Look at you being up.
And so I would just ask that as we step into this, you bring your most vulnerable selves. You bring the ability to have real conversation and really question yourself on why you hold some of these expectations of yourself, especially over the last year. And if you can take away one thing from this evening, it would be this: that you have a community that supports you and loves you, and we're going to help you get through whatever part of this that you need from Wise Wellness Guild and from this incredible group supported by the Christ Hospital. Wise Wellness Guild, for many of you who are maybe new, we are a community aimed at advancing women through whole self wellness. So that means more than just yoga and a smoothie. It means actually integrating all parts of our whole selves, our career and financial literacy, in with mental health, in with social health, how we're bringing all of that together to really support one another. And I'm just really honored to have the Christ Hospital here this evening to help acknowledge and recognize that you're more than just a patient. You're a woman, you're a human, you're a mom. You play a lot of different roles, and that is really the difference with the Christ Hospital, is that they're really trying to find ways to help support the whole you, so you can really feel like they know you and are best supporting you in all the ways that you are as a woman. So I have the great pleasure of introducing this evening Whitney Ellison, who is going to be your moderator for this evening. Whitney Ellison, and I'll let her explain a little bit more about Wellison Enterprises and the work that she does, but Whitney has led us through some really incredible pivotal moments here, especially throughout the pandemic, and into this new phase of whatever 2021 is. We don't really know how to describe it, but it's happening, it's here. And we did the first event, Mothering in a Pandemic, and what we found is that really just having the conversation and coming together was the first step to starting to breaking down some of these stigmas and maybe even some of the things that we held as bringing anxiety to ourselves that provoked this fear that maybe we weren't doing enough. Getting it all out on the table was really awesome. So that's why we decided to do this again, have the opportunity to have everybody around the table and have this conversation. So Whitney, thank you so much for being here today and leading us through this really important dialogue.
Thank you for the kind introduction, Stevie. It is a pleasure and a privilege to be a part of this group, to be speaking to all of these amazing women who showed up for themselves tonight. I applaud all of you for being here. Thank you so much. And I'm so excited to be a part of this. So I founded and own Wellison Enterprises. And basically what that is I use two tools: the Enneagram, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. It's basically a personality type tool defining 9 types, and it's made up of why we do what we do. It's not behavior, but it's motivation. And then it also identifies our defense mechanisms, which tend to be our biggest barriers. At some point they helped us survive. Now they might be getting in the way a little bit. So I combine that with the use of quantum energy, which is basically the idea that we attract what we think about and the power of our thoughts. And I help women, I help men too, but I mostly help women. I help women achieve their desired outcomes. Outside of that, I've also created the Enneagram Mom interviews. That was 24 amazing interviews featuring women just like all of you that showed up to tell their stories and how they identify through their Enneagram types. And I'm currently doing the Enneagram Entrepreneur interviews, which feature women talking about their entrepreneurship journey. All that said, I love to help women feel seen and heard, and that's why I'm here tonight. I have 3 kids. I have an 8-year-old daughter, a 6-year-old son, and an 18-month-old baby who was a bit of a surprise. So we'll get more into that in a little bit, but that's me in a nutshell. And I would love to go around and do some introductions for the rest of our panel. So Alanna, I'd love to start with you. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. Hello, everyone. I'm Alanna Martella, and I am the morning traffic reporter at WLWT. And I also am on the board for Make-A-Wish and am a speaker. And I am on this panel to talk about egg freezing. So in October of this past year, I started IVF in order to freeze my eggs because I went through a medical catastrophe, I guess you could call it, that's caused my egg supply to diminish. So I'm not married, I'm not engaged, I'm a single woman, and I don't know if I have, if I'm going to have kids anytime soon, but with this diminishing egg supply, I froze them in order to, have the possibility of having kids someday. So.
Thank you, Alanna. I can't wait to hear more about your journey. And now, Tasha, if you could share.
Hello, everyone. I am Tasha Pinelo. I am a photographer. I shoot mostly female entrepreneurs and families. And I was a longtime television producer, and I still make a little television, but it's both. I work for PBS affiliates, and I make programming for children. So it's all very in line with tonight. Children and their parents. And I have 3 children. I have a 6-year-old and a set of twins. And right after I had the twins, I thought I was having a panic attack, and I was having, my heart valve had failed, and I was in postpartum cardiomyopathy. And there were plenty of signs those last couple of weeks of pregnancy. And so tonight, if I can talk about listening to your body and really fighting for yourself, that would be my goal. I'm happy to be here.
Tasha, thanks so much. And I will add, Tasha and I are good friends, and we carried babies at the same time, which was quite a journey for both of us in 2019. So those little twins are pretty awesome. So thanks, Tasha. Okay, let's see here. Dr. Salomon, you're next.
Hi, my name is Morgan Salomon. I am an OBGYN at Christ Hospital. I have only lived in Cincinnati for the last few years. I was born in North Carolina, or born in California and grew up in North Carolina. I've lived a lot of different places. I kind of came to Cincinnati because my husband is in training as in pediatric psychiatry at Cincinnati Children's, and I absolutely love it here. I do not have kids yet, so my husband and I have been doing a lot of talking about when to start that process, and so definitely the planning for motherhood is where I'm at in my phase of life. And it's something that I've helped talk a lot of women through. So I'm excited to be here tonight and talk about it with you all.
Thank you so much. And thank you for being here. Dr. Turner?
Hi, I'm Emily Turner. I am an OBGYN as well at the Christ Hospital in the same group as Dr. Salomon. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, so not far away, and I moved here with my husband in a very long roundabout journey, but he's from here, and we have a almost 1-year-old son. I was actually a high-risk pregnancy, and I delivered via C-section, not planned. And so I had kind of a wild motherhood journey as well, had a COVID baby and experienced moving from Southern Tennessee in the middle of COVID with a newborn. So all that fun stuff. I love talking to women about their pregnancy experiences, their after pregnancy experiences. I one of the best things about being an OBGYN is getting to see every different type of woman and the way that she experiences her pregnancy or her child and her family. And so I love being able to talk about that, and I'm excited to do that today.
Thank you, Dr. Turner. We're excited to hear what you have to say. Dr. Ashley Salomon.
Hi, everyone. I am a licensed clinical psychologist, and I own Galia Collaborative, which is a mental health practice here in Cincinnati. And my own motherhood journey involves a lot of trying to get pregnant, eventually resulting in going through IVF for my first 3 children, who are 8, 6, and 3. And then actually, just like Whitney, a surprise little girl at the end who is now 18 months old. So I am really grateful to be here tonight among all of you. And in my work, I work a lot with women. Our practice specializes in a lot of conditions that impact women, but particularly postpartum depression and perinatal mental health issues. So.
Thank you, Ashley, and thank you for the work that your collaborative does. It's really fantastic for our community. And Dr. Maggie Wilhelm.
Hello. You know what? I'm not a doctor. I have to be honest. I'm not.
I'm sorry.
That's
Therapist,
okay.
just equate. That was presumptuous. I apologize.
You can assume that. No, but I am a therapist. But it's a master's degree, not a doctorate degree. I got to be frank right from the start. But I'm a mental health therapist and an empowerment coach. And I'm really happy to be here with you all tonight. Obviously, just as much as your body goes through so much to become a mother and in the process and postpartum, and whatever your journey to motherhood is, if you adopt, if you go through IVF, whatever that process is, the mental health journey alongside of it. So as a therapist, my work is largely around identity shifts and transitions that we all go through in life, and certainly in motherhood. And so I actually became a mother back in October, also a pandemic baby. And I could have used Dr. Turner or Dr. Salomon because I did not have a great experience with my OB, and I am from the support side, I did not have a great experience. And then I also had some postpartum complications that are still lingering to this day. So I am really happy to be here with all of you mamas who do great work.
Thank you so much, Maggie. And the last thing I'll add before we get started is, if you've been following the WISE handle, you probably saw a beautiful post from founder Stevie Carr yesterday about her journey to motherhood, which was adoption. So I want to share that to make sure you know we're well represented here. So if you are considering adoption, ask those questions, because we have a great resource in Stevie. All right. Thank you, everybody, for introducing yourselves. The first topic we're going to touch on for the next 15 minutes or so is just for the women on this panel that are moms, an overview of your motherhood journey. And I'm going to kick it off. It sounds like, Dr. Turner, you and I might have had a similar experience. I'm actually a mom who delivered via C-section 3 times. And my story, I choose to find humor in it. My mother delivered babies, all 3 of us C-sections as well. She was 4'11", and the male doctor she had took one look at her and said, "Your hips are too narrow. They're not childbirthing hips. You will be scheduled for a C-section." And then I was born. For me, it was a little different. I went in for my 36-week appointment, had a great relationship with my nurse practitioner, and she checked my cervix, which, for all of you that haven't had the delightful pleasure of that yet, it is something to experience. In any event, she checked my cervix and said, "Oh, your baby's bald." And I was like, "Oh, that's funny." And it, whatever, it was fine. The following week I went in, and then one of the doctors of the women's place that I went to came in and did my cervix check, and she asked me if anything was new. And I said, "Well, the nurse practitioner said the baby was bald." And she was like, And then she told me, "We need to have an ultrasound." Now, I would have panicked, but for the fact that we'd already heard the heartbeat. So at this point, I'm like, something weird's going on, but everything's okay. So I went in and had an ultrasound. And when I came back to my room, my nurse practitioner, again, who's somebody I really got along with, came in and she said, well, I have some good news and some bad news. And I said, okay. She goes, the good news is that your baby's ass isn't hairy. She said, the bad news is that you're going to have a C-section. So we scheduled the C-section. And again, because I grew up with a mother who had had 3 C-sections, I never really thought any different about it. But I think a lot of people, the birthing process is super important to them. And some people would have really taken that hard. For me, I'm grateful for the scheduled timing and so forth. It ended up working out well because my baby was 9 pounds, 8 ounces. And so when they asked me with my second if I wanted a VBAC, I said, hard pass. I am like 5'4", and I made a good call because number 2 was 9 pounds, 1 ounce. So, and then number 3, she broke my water. So we didn't go at the scheduled time, but I did have a C-section with her. I am now done having babies. So anyway, that's kind of my motherhood journey in terms of the birthing process. One thing I will say is that even though I had C-sections and was okay with it, I did experience some judgment from other people about C-sections. And so Dr. Turner, I'd like to start with you and talk about your journey a little bit and how you felt when you ended up having to change into a C-section and what that was like for you.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I had a high-risk pregnancy. I have a history of blood clots and a blood clotting disorder. And so I was on medication, blood thinners throughout my pregnancy. I had a wonderful friend and OBGYN, actual high-risk doctor, MFM, who took care of me. And we talked about everything. We did an induction because it helps with the timing of being on your blood thinners during pregnancy. And I came in, I had my induction overnight. My water broke on its own, so I got to enjoy that lovely experience. And I started having contractions. It seemed like everything was going very smoothly. And then my son's, the heart rate kind of was not tolerating contractions and tolerating labor very well. And so my physician came in and she checked my cervix, and when I hadn't changed for a while, she looked at me and said, how do you feel about an alternative form of delivery? And I said, whatever we need to do to get him here safely is fine with me. And so I had a C-section. I think for me, being an OBGYN, the idea of being able to do a vaginal delivery is obviously very great. And it's, in many ways it's safe, and it's, kind of the easiest form of delivery in the sense of recovery. There's a lot less complications typically with scars and things like that. But I knew that it was a possibility, and I knew that I just wanted my son to be here safely. I've had an interesting experience with some of the shame in that, when I tell people I had a C-section, they say, oh, so, because it was his heart rate, you're going to try to have a vaginal delivery next time. And I am of the similar opinion of hard pass. I don't want to go through that again. I don't want to try and then not have it work out. And I am pretty sure that we only want 2 children. And so in my mind, I'd rather have this, straightforward option, and having a C-section is just as valid of a way to have a baby and be a mother. So
thank you for sharing that. And yes, I think that the message here for any of you that are wanting to carry and deliver a baby and you're working toward that is do it the way that feels best for you, and understand that you shouldn't attach to any kind of outcome, because it will be what it will be, and your journey will be sacred and whole no matter what way your baby comes. So I'll shift gears a little bit. And Tasha,
if I can just chime in on that. I really had a hard time having a C-section. I really had to grieve not having the birth plan that I had. And honestly, like I know, like in my head, it doesn't make sense, but I have my plans are my plans. And I labored with Lincoln for 14 hours. And my husband had to get in there and say, honey, I know this is what you wanted, but you need to it's okay. You have to let this, you got to go with it. It's okay. And it was just like hearing him, and I'm getting emotional just talking about it, but that really helped. And I remember I was really struggling like those days, and I know it doesn't make sense. because you're here and your baby's here. And everyone's like, yeah, and I'm like, but this isn't what I planned. It's hard to describe, but the photographer we use for our family, she's also a twin mom, and she came in to do our newborn photos, and we got to talking about it, and she was like, you have to grieve it. You have to process it. Don't let anyone tell you that your feelings are stupid or invalid and they don't know. You have to work through it. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Oh, thank you. That's fantastic. I love that perspective. I love the vulnerability, and I really appreciate that you shared that experience. Thank you so much for stopping me and saying that, because that's super important. The grieving process is important. It's a part of that journey. It's a part of so much with motherhood, and I definitely want to get into that a little bit. Ashley, you have your mic off. Would you like to say something about this, Dr. Salomon?
Just wanted to be ready. I didn't have the same experience, but I think just what Tasha was saying really resonates with me about just the idea of the importance of the grieving process for things to not go as you plan. And I think in my work and in my professional life, I work with so many women who, one, the experience of a C-section came as a result of some kind of traumatic experience. Even if there wasn't a negative outcome, the experience of feeling suddenly like you are no longer in control of the process, or there's an emergency situation, or the intensity in the room is picking up. I just like to highlight for a lot of women that can be a very traumatizing experience, just even the fear that overtakes your body, or not knowing exactly what to expect. And obviously everyone doesn't experience that, but that really takes some like processing out of your body. And I think then going into a subsequent pregnancy and delivery, oftentimes those things will really rise to the surface. So I just wanted to comment that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really such a personal journey, the delivery process, like tying your heart to a vision of how you want it to be, the loss of that if it doesn't work out that way, and just really having that dialogue now to know that when you go through the birthing process, that this is a real thing that all moms that have delivered babies deal with in one way, shape, or form. And it's okay. But to Tasha's point, it's important if you experience a loss of that vision in any way, or you experience the trauma of childbirth, grieving is important to process everything. Maggie, I want to shift to you and just hear a little bit about your motherhood journey.
Yeah. Well, I actually got pregnant before pandemic started. And it's funny, I look at pictures of like when I was very newly pregnant, I went to see Oprah in a room with 13,000 people. And I like can't even imagine that now, but it was a different life. So I was pregnant, right before pandemic started. And then my little guy was born in October. And what I brought up earlier is like with Dr. Turner and Dr. Salomon was I really could have used more support during my pregnancy journey. My OB was very factual. In fact, she would quiz me every time I came in for visits, which was really not helpful for me. I would start sweating and get really nervous during my OB visits. And it was like, this is supposed to be a joyful experience. And instead it was very stressful. I wanted to switch doctors, but between pandemic and insurance, it just didn't seem worth it. And then my son was born, like I said, in October, and I had a pretty great delivery. Frankly, I was really lucky. But then I got an infection 5 days postpartum, and had to go back to the hospital. And basically I was then told I needed to heal organically. So they took all my stitches out, and over the next few months, I kept going back to the OB, and essentially my wound never healed properly. And I had a hole in my perineum that just never healed. And so I ended up having to see a specialist. And that happened, I think that started in March, and I finally had a procedure done in April. And so I am still healing from my postpartum complications. But you know, I would say even more difficult than that, truthfully, is the loneliness that has come from a pandemic baby and living out of state. A lot of you all mentioned living out of state from family and friends, and that is the case for me as well. And so my biggest message, whether you're just thinking about having babies, you're freezing your eggs, you're thinking of adoption, you're pregnant already, whatever the case may be, is to get support. And, you know, this coming to this event is a great place to start because there's so many wonderful women and resources here. But, you know, whether it's a mommy and me group or your girlfriends who have babies or are thinking of having babies, or your friends who are single, just talk to them anyway. We all need support, and it's hugely important in this journey.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for calling out something that's a really interesting dynamic. I'll touch on this real quick and then we're going to move to the IVF journey, but pandemic babies. So that's kind of a special thing that I'm noticing, having had one, because I feel like when you have an infant, even if you had the infant prior to the pandemic, everything just really changed. Like you get stripped of so much, including the experience of being with others, receiving in-person help in whatever capacity that looks like, whether it's just your mother coming over so you can take a nap, right? So there is something to be said for the experience of having a child during this extremely traumatizing time. And I want to hold space for anyone on here that may have just recently had a baby this past year, maybe had them in late 2019, like a handful of us did. We see you and we feel you. Like, this is just a very strange time to step into motherhood, whether it's your first child or not. It could be, like me, it could be your third child. So, you know, it's generated a lot of unique feelings, a lot of additional grieving, and a lot of very lonely feelings. And I know, Maggie, you know, we're going to talk a little bit later about what happens to your identity. So we'll come back to that, but thank you for sharing that. For the moms here who either have had done IVF, or like Alanna, maybe you could start off this conversation, since it's so fresh to you, just the process of freezing your eggs, and share a little bit about that and what that's been like for you, that journey.
Excuse me. Hello. Yeah, so as I mentioned before, I recently freezed my eggs. I went through you do the egg retrieval process the same way that you do IVF. And it all stemmed from an illness that I had about 12 years ago. And my mom, who was also on here, hello mom, how are you? She has always said, you know, you might want to get your numbers checked, because, you know, if you want to have kids down the road, I don't know how your eggs are going to do, because it was a topic of discussion that we had when I had some of my intestines twisted around each other, and I ended up having to have 15 feet of them removed. And it's something my doctors have always talked about, you know, like, you might not be able to have kids down the road. So I saw a specialist to kind of see where my numbers stand, and my AMH was 0.2, which is basically premenopausal. And so we decided to go through the process of freezing my eggs. And I did everything, you know, gave myself shots, went through everything, had the egg retrieval. And honestly, I'm so glad that I did it. Unfortunately, we were only able to get 6 eggs. So my doctor does recommend I do another round or 2. But I think with what I have dealt with my illness in the past, it was really, really hard on my body. I developed ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome with my IVF and egg retrieval. And I think it's a very small number of people get it. I believe only like 5%, maybe even less. But I of course was one of that number that ended up getting it. My ovaries ended up being 4 times the normal size. I had cysts growing all over them. My pelvic area filled up with fluid. I even ended up in the emergency room because it was so bad. So yeah, it was a really hard process for me, and I like would love to have kids someday. So I'm glad I got 6 eggs, but I don't know if I can physically go through the entire process of IVF again, because it was really hard on me, especially. But I mean, I'm very glad I did it. So I would recommend anybody who might be in a similar situation. You know, I'm 30. I'm not married. I'm not engaged. And so I would encourage people to go check their numbers and see where they stand. And if their numbers are dwindling, such as mine are, to go do it for sure, because it is very rare that it happens. But unfortunately, it did happen to me.
Alanna, can I ask a question of you? So when you're talking about having that conversation with your physician, how do you even enter into that process and saying, like, I want to get my numbers checked, or I want to know, like, how does that process even get rolling if somebody's interested?
So I actually, honestly, I didn't even really talk to my physician about it. We have a family friend who is an OBGYN. And so my mom and we went to her and we said, you know, hey, like, I was told in the past, my numbers, you know, with my health history, my chronic illness, that I might not be able to have kids. And so we just kind of wanted to see where it stood. And she did all these tests, a lot of blood work, and it showed that, you know, I do have an egg supply and my hormones are normal. Everything's normal except just the diminishing egg supply. So she recommended that I do it. And so that's what I did. I now have a fridge full of IVF meds still, because for the other rounds that I probably won't do. But yeah, so it was just kind of something. Like, my doctor didn't really approach me about it thinking that, you know, you should do it. It was more myself being proactive than anything.
No, I love that. And I love that message, because there's so much around, I think, being able, you talked about having the conversation on C-section, having the conversation on IVF, like really owning your journey and owning it enough to know that it might not go exactly according to plan and that it's, you know, there's going to be things that you just don't know. The human body is this organic thing that is just going to do what it's going to do. But I think that that's where, and I don't know if doctors Turner or Salomon have any other input about how to even get the process started, because I think that is the narrative that I hear so much from women who are starting on that process, or people who want to start having children. It's like this crapshoot. It's like, I'm going to go off of birth control, and then I'm going to just, like, we're just going to see. And there's this silent after, and I know I experienced this, that I had a spat with cervical cancer and a lot of other things that kind of happened to me. And then I was like, okay, well, when I start trying, like, it's going to be easy. And then it just wasn't. It just didn't happen. And you don't think about all of those things when you have the Instagram picture. And I know we're talking more about that, but I love the idea of being proactive and getting an idea, like having more information and proactively seeking that.
So if I can speak to it, I would say, I think the most important part, and I think this is going to go a lot into what Tasha is going to talk about. And honestly, for Maggie, I think finding a provider that, and I'm going to say vibes because that's the most like lingo way to say it. And that's the truth. Like, you really need to find a doctor or a provider who you feel. I had a patient yesterday, and it was not fertility related, but I walked out of the room, and I don't think that I'm magical, and I'm not going to vibe with every patient. I have a very unique personality, and I'm going to get along great with some people, and some people are going to feel like I don't hear them, and that's okay. The important thing is that you, as a human being and a woman, find a provider that vibes with you, that hears you. And I walked out of this room yesterday, and she just looked at me and she said, "Thank you for listening to me." And I was like, and I'm not saying anything bad about male physicians, because I have several partners who are phenomenal, incredible partners who are male physicians, and she did not see one of them. But she had a male physician for 12 years, and she was like, he just never listened to me. And I think most of the problem that she had was solved by me sitting there for 20 minutes, just like letting her tell me her problems. And I think if you talk to people, you talk to your provider, they will hear what your concerns are and they will start that process. If you are thinking about getting pregnant, and I'm sure that we're going to talk about this a little bit, don't hesitate to make an appointment with your doctor just to talk about it.
Yeah, I love that message. I think that so much people are like nervous to even get the ball rolling or have the conversation. But I will tell you, I see Dr. Lana Lang and I saw Dr. Kirsten Cook yesterday for my PCP. And both are so excellent at just like plopping down and being like, so what's up? Like, what's going on? And you know, I think that the vibe, I love that. That's so like relatable. So I love it.
I do.
Elena.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Elena.
I do have one more thing to add, actually, that I forgot to add in. Like, I'm also not able to carry kids with my illness, so we will have to go down the whole road of surrogacy and all of everything that goes into that. So that did add like another emotional level to the whole thing as well. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. You know, I also think that's something not often talked about is when you can't carry what the other options are, you know, whether it's adoption or surrogacy, but just allowing people to hear that you did it anyways and that surrogacy is a possibility for you and that you're able to accept that and be okay with that. You know, I think that's a really great thing to share and make sure that everybody hears. It is an option as well. Thank you, Elena. Let's go to Dr. Salomon. Ashley, you had mentioned earlier that you had experienced IVF as well, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so would you like to speak to that a little bit on your experience?
Sure. So my husband and I had decided to start trying to have children, and just like was said a couple minutes ago, I think we had gone off birth control, really just having no idea what would come of that. And so, which in retrospect feels really frustrating to have had like so little understanding of my own body or what to expect. But, you know, like many couples, we tried to get pregnant with all of the normal interventions and recognize that that wasn't happening. And so we went down the path of fertility treatment and started with IUI, which we did several times to obviously no avail. And then we actually started the adoption process at that point and had decided that we would pursue, you know, domestic open adoption. And as we got a little bit further into that journey, we decided to also try to pursue IVF. And so we were fortunate to get pregnant through our first round of IVF and have embryos to freeze at that point for any future pregnancies. So that was really fortunate. We ended up having 2 subsequent children via those frozen cycles. And I had a relatively smooth experience with IVF. And I would say that even despite the fact that, you know, it went probably as smoothly as it could have and had a successful outcome, I think it remains one of the most traumatic experiences of my life, in so many ways. I think in one of the biggest ways, and that I think is important to really name, is that it had a huge impact on my relationship with my husband. Obviously, and maybe not obviously, but in our sexual experience with each other, our connection with each other, just all of the feelings that arise and the frustration and sadness and grief that come along with the process. And one of the things, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about it later, that I think I wasn't really prepared for or just didn't recognize kind of going into the process was how much those feelings would stay with me even after having a child in my arms. So having to really kind of navigate through the grief and trauma of all of that. So we're really fortunate. We, in terms of, we couldn't get pregnant both because of what turned out to be PCOS for me and then low sperm count and motility for my husband. So we were given this like infinitesimal chance of ever having children with each other. And then our daughter came along, and I will say it was not because I just stopped worrying about it because I hated hearing that. And I continued to not believe that that was true. But something in the universe decided to send her to us. So that was our journey through IVF and then a spontaneous pregnancy.
Thank you. I really appreciate that you called out. There's so many assumptions made about motherhood journey. And again, just really a reminder of what a personal thing it is. And that it's really easy for someone else to say something like, well, you finally stopped worrying about it and you were able to get pregnant. That's something that is definitely unnecessary. And we hear it often because I think people think that because we were able to conceive naturally, it makes it okay. And that doesn't hold any regard for the whole journey prior to it. So it's definitely something to think about. And I really appreciate you calling that out, Ashley. Tasha, I want to get to you in 1 second. I don't want to get too deep into this, but I want to acknowledge it before we go to you. And that is, generally speaking, IVF, nobody talks about this either, can be a really costly process, as can surrogacy. And oftentimes, it's not an option for everyone. And I know a lot of folks are trying to work to convince insurance companies to provide for this. A lot of companies are exploring the idea of providing IVF for this. But for the sake of implicit bias in our own journeys, it's important to understand that while this is an option, unfortunately, not everybody has access to it. And I want to acknowledge that because it's something it's an opportunity in our society to improve and give everybody the opportunity to have access to have children biologically if they're able to and they would like to. And with that being said, yes.
And I was just going to add, I think that there is a little bit of a stigma with adoption as well. And I wanted to just share two things, and this will be in the recap notes, but if you do have interest in adoption, there are grants and tax benefits that come back to you for being able to invest in that way, and a lot of other resources that are available, just depending on where you're looking to adopt from, what your values are and your objectives are at the end of the day. So like I said, I want to keep this very focused on being able to have, sorry, Saki. I want to be able to focus the conversation on how, really more on this birthing process through the Christ Hospital. But one thing I just wanted to add to close the loop on adoption is that Christ Hospital was with me the entire step of the way through my adoption process. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that it was just because we didn't end up going that route doesn't mean that they weren't a part of the process and the whole journey. And it was amazing to see the support system and it just really the different routes that we decided to take through more like an integrative approach. So
thank you. And Alanna, did you want to add something real quick?
I did. So how Stevie was talking about grants and stuff with adoption, I like a lot, IVF's pretty expensive, and luckily my work has really good benefits, so I only had to pay a portion of the medication. But an organization that I've recently gotten involved with called Parental Hope, and it's here in Cincinnati. They provide IVF grants for people to do IVF, egg retrieval, IUI, all of those types of things. So if anybody here is interested in doing that, feel free to reach out to me and I can connect you with them. That's that type of thing. They're wonderful.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. And Stevie, I'm sure you'll be able to get that information as well in the follow-up too. So thank you. Now, Tasha, I want to move to you because first I want to talk a bit about your IVF journey, and then I want to talk about your postpartum journey and what you brought up earlier about the heart condition that developed after carrying twins. So if you could just share a little bit about IVF first and then go into that, that would be great.
Yes, and I want to second Parental Hope. My husband and I are also we've been donors and we've gone to their gala, and they do so much good work and help so many people. So I want to be able to give, you know, someone wants to have, start a family through IVF or IUI or however works for them. I don't want money to be a barrier. I did IVF, and my ovaries also overstimulated. I produced 36 eggs, and yeah. And so we did a fresh cycle with our oldest, and then we had frozens, and then I implanted 2 and had a miscarriage, and then implanted another 2, and that's how we got the twins. So it was a lot. It was a lot. It was a lot of money. It was a lot on my body. I mean, I wouldn't, because, you know, it worked out. You know, I have the 3 kids that I wanted forever. I wouldn't change anything, but it was a lot. And I think one of the things that helped is at the time I was like, oh, I'll go to these doctor's appointments and I'll just do it. But my husband was he insisted, he never missed one. And I went to the doctor a lot. He was at every single one. And now looking back, I think that helped. Even though I didn't think it was necessary, I think it helped me get through it. And it probably it was just reassuring. And also I wasn't secretive about it. I shared it with like my best friends, and, you know, it was a conversation. Like I was doing spinning classes at 6 a.m. because I had to get blood flow to my uterus, and my friend was going with me. And then I was on the Mediterranean diet to up my chances, because before we got to IVF, I did 8 rounds of IUI and all kinds of exploratory surgeries, and we never did figure out what was the barrier to me conceiving naturally. But, you know, I just think the support system, and I think of myself as a public-private person. I don't think that like I hoard information, but I found people that I trusted to go through that journey with me. And I think that's important. So yeah, that's my IVF story. And as far as what happened now with our first, I had fibroids, which they always said didn't play a factor in why I wasn't getting pregnant. But during my C-section, one of them got nicked and I hemorrhaged. And so I actually don't remember delivering my first son because I passed out, and then got through that. That was kind of, you know, it was traumatic. It took me a while to be ready to go back in the process. With the twins, you know, there's a lot of jokes about me being in my late 30s and carrying twins. And when I would say, I'm so tired, I feel so bad, it would be like, well, you know, almost like, haha, you're old. And it's, you know, there's 2 in there. I'm like, but I'm having a hard time walking. I described it, it feels like I'm walking through wet sand all the time, like those last couple of weeks. And I was like, Whitney, you may remember, I was like falling asleep sending an email. Like I would start typing an email to a client and literally just fall asleep on my keyboard. And I was going to the doctor every week, and then it got to twice a week, and I was always talking about, it was just jokey. My twins were born. Fast forward 10 days later, after, you know, I had them, I'm at home and I cannot calm myself down. I'm wearing my Fitbit, my heart rate is sky high. It's 2 a.m. and it's hard. The twins were born a month early, and it was just a hard time, obviously. And I told my husband, I was like, I think I need to go to the hospital. I don't know what's wrong. I don't know if I'm having a panic attack. I don't know what it is. I hate hospitals. So if I'm saying I need to go, I need to go. So I can't even tell you who was watching our children. We went, and I am there. And I remember, because I was supposed to take my son trick-or-treating at my husband's job. And I'm sitting there in one of those like rooms they have in the ER, one of the private rooms. And Dr. Chung at Christ comes in flanked with like 2 other people. And he holds my hand and he's like, "You're very sick." And I was like, "No, I'm not." And then he's like, no. He goes something like, "The decision you make right now could decide if you get to be with your children or if you need a heart transplant." And I literally said, "I need to take my kid trick-or-treating. Can I make an appointment and come back?" And he was just like, no. So my heart was functioning at 23%, And there have been all of these signs, long story short, and then everything is fine now, but it was a lot. It was a lot. And also back to this is just being stubborn. I also wanted to keep nursing the twins. So it was just a thing on top of thing. But it just came back to, why didn't I advocate for myself? Like, I knew there was a problem. I am telling all the people and no one's listening to me. I just feel like I should have pumped the brakes. But if you've been in a medical situation, you know it's not easy to switch doctors, insurance, and you're so far in the process. But all the signs, I mean, just my age and like the other multiple pregnancy, there were signs there. So I feel like I've talked a lot. So that's it.
I think your story is really important, and I'm glad you talked a lot, because people need to understand, to your point, you got to pay attention to your bodies. If symptoms are happening, you need to make sure that the doctor takes them seriously. And, it's nothing against the doctor that saw you so much as like, how else would you have known, right? And so people here can learn from your story so that they do know, and that is so important. And speaking of that, I'd love to ask Dr. Salomon to talk for a little bit about the preparation for that journey.
Yeah, so I would say that's going to look a little bit different for every individual woman, depending on where you are in your life, what your medical history is like, any other considerations. So kind of like Dr. Turner brought up, I think it's always a good idea either to have a separate visit, or if it's time for your annual exam, to talk about like, what do I need to do to prepare for pregnancy? And for most women, it's not going to entail that much, but just being able to have that conversation and know what you need to do to prepare yourself. I'd say general things are prenatal vitamin, which is great for your hair, skin, and nails. So there's no reason not to be on one, but it's actually better to be on a prenatal vitamin before you get pregnant. And the most important thing is that in that is folic acid. So especially if you have a little time to figure out which one you like, because some of them are gigantic pills that are hard to swallow. So finding something that you feel comfortable with, I think, is a good idea before you get pregnant. Another thing is going to be cycles. So are your cycles regular? Do you have one once a month? Do you know when it's coming? Do you have any issues with your periods? If your periods are very regular and predictable and you don't have any problems with heavy bleeding or anything like that, then that's great. And if you do have any of those issues, it's really important to talk to your doctor about it, because it could affect what you need to do in terms of talking about getting you pregnant. Like, do you need any other testing or anything? And then with medical problems, so if you do have medical issues, especially like hypertension, high blood pressure, diabetes, that kind of thing, it's really important to know, like, am I at a point where things are well enough medically that I am in a good position to get pregnant? And if I'm not, what do I need to do to get there? Healthy diet and exercise is really important. And getting into a routine that you could maintain while pregnant is great. And then obviously, stuff like exposure to things that could be dangerous, like whether that's an occupational exposure, like do you work somewhere that you're getting exposed to radiation or dangerous chemicals, or, drug use, that kind of thing. It's really important to talk to your doctor about it so that you're ready. And so another thing, just general healthcare, like, are you up to date on your pap smear and all of your vaccines? And I'll give a brief moment to plug in the COVID vaccine. That is something that I recommend to everybody. There is no evidence that it causes any problems with your ability to get pregnant. And every major society has come out, like the American Society for Reproductive Medicine, saying there's no reason to delay getting the COVID vaccine if you're trying to get pregnant. So I wanted to dispel that myth. It is very prominent out there on the internet, and there's no reason to worry about that with fertility. I can tell you personally, I am planning on getting pregnant sometime in the near future, and I had zero hesitations getting my COVID vaccine, because you can't get pregnant if you get really sick, right? So I would definitely say it's an important thing. And if you have any questions or concerns, definitely talk to your doctor, your healthcare provider about it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And one thing I want to add about everyone's story is, first of all, the through line here is that they're all unique. They're all unique. And we've talked a lot about some of the things that nobody ever really talks about. And those can seem a little daunting. Excuse me, this was just my reminder about breakout groups coming up. But it seems a little daunting. But the reason that we're sharing this with you is so that when you go into this journey, you feel informed. You know that there's going to be a beautiful part of the process. That's what everybody talks about. And there is so much beauty to the process, but there's also struggle, and that's okay, because we've all been through it. Those of us that have come out on the other side, whether we had surrogacy or childbirth or adoption, there is a shift. There's a shift in who you are as a human being, because you go one day from being this individual to the next day being a mother, and you're responsible now for the life of your child. So just understand that all of us have shared some really important detailed information, and we're doing this out of love to make sure that you go in with your eyes wide open, and that you aren't like us and say, well, nobody ever told me about that. This is something that we can do to help pay it forward from our experiences. So with that being said, Stevie, I'd love to turn it over to you to talk a little bit about the breakout groups.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's just a few things that as we kind of close this portion, I think it's going to be really important for us to think about how we want to step into these breakouts. There's things that there's 4 different areas that we can get into as we are, thinking about prepping for motherhood. Being a pregnant advocate for yourself. Are there things that you are pregnant and you've been really wanting to know how you can step into your own and feel supported? The grief is real. There's some things that we, haven't had the opportunity to get into around grieving, loss of child, or grieving loss of the expectation of what you thought it was going to be. I think that then we also have babies here. Who am I? And I know that all of these, pieces, I know me personally, my journey, and I know Elena's journey, are going to look different than, other people's, but there are also so many similarities, because the expectation of what we thought it was going to be really shifted, the kind of who we intrinsically are. And I just want to acknowledge, with Mother's Day coming up here this coming Sunday, that I want you to just allow for yourself this space and time, and these as we move into these breakouts, for you to think about, what is it that how does this make you feel? Like, with this impending holiday meant to highlight and support you and promote you, or to highlight, support, and promote other women around you. I think that it's just really crucial that we know that there is, like any holiday, like anything that's put up on a pedestal, there's a light and a dark with it. And so I wanted to offer this space for you as you're going into these conversations, that it's not lost on me that that's part of the reason why we decided to have it on this timing too. So the last piece I would say is I just would really love to kick this over to Maggie Wilhelm. As I'd mentioned, Maggie will be just kind of level setting a little bit of kind of what we can expect going into these breakouts, and a little bit about just our personal identities. I think that at any point in time that you're in your life, and you go through a life transition, it's always an excellent time for us to step back into ourselves, create space, and really acknowledge that we should be intentional about how we step into that next phase, but allow for ourselves the opportunity to grieve. And so, Maggie, thank you so much for taking the time to just share a little bit about your approach. I know it's helped me so much as I've really stepped into this new version of myself as taking on the role of mom.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great intro, Stevie, because, no matter how you come to motherhood, whatever your journey looks like, you go through this huge identity shift of the woman I was yesterday is not the woman I am today. And she's there, but that shift is so monumental. And I think it can look as small. It's minor in some ways, but not in others. As, you know, I miss being able to just hop in the car and go to Target by myself. Yet that's a big deal, because that's your independence. And, you know, most of us are career women these days, either, you know, before and sometimes during our motherhood journey. And so that's a big deal. And asking yourself that question, you know, who am I now? And who am I now that one of my primary roles is taking care of this little human? And I can share just a personal example that I've gone through in the last 6 months with my little one is I decided not to return to work full time. So I'm doing my private practice and coaching and therapy, but I had a full-time job before as well. And it was really in line with my career path and my goals to not return to my full-time gig. But and I did not expect, when I did finally, you know, resign, I felt this sense of loss. I felt this sense of, oh, I'm saying goodbye to part of who I was before. I spent so many years working towards my career, and not that I'm letting that go completely, but it was an unexpected sense of grief. And I wanted to say that I noticed with every story that was told today, there was a theme of grief, whether it was grieving that my journey is not going to look the way I thought it would, grieving that my body wasn't doing what I've been told it should, grieving that I couldn't deliver the way I should. I don't like the word should, but the way I've been told I should, or grieving that, gosh, my baby's here, my body's not the same, my relationship with my partner is not the same, my physical stamina is not the same, my body is literally not functioning the way it used to. Every step of the motherhood journey brings, you know, beauty, but also brings these challenges. And the grief that we experience through every step is normal and valid, so valid. And I think opening the conversation and being able to, you know, share your story and share your feelings, so important. And so again, I go back to what I said in the very beginning, which is getting that support, whether it's, you know, in therapy or through a mommy and me group, or girlfriends, just, you know, finding that person that you trust, that you can cry with, that you can share your story with, because we all need to tell our stories. So if we go into these breakthrough sessions with that in mind, feel free to, you know, ask questions, because all of the women on this panel are open to that. And feel free to share your story if you're in that space where you feel safe to do so.
Thank you so much. And so what we're doing right now is I'm starting to assign people to breakouts. We'll go ahead and do the first group. And I think that would just be, it's going to be helpful for people to, let's see, for people, if you can just write in the chat as we kind of do these, that way we'll go ahead and break out effectively for the next 15 minutes or so. And then that'll allow for me to kind of push everybody into those very quickly. Okay. So hang tight. And if you can just write that into the chat based on which one you would like to join, that way I can get you kind of assigned to those as we move forward. Okay. So let's do,
and it's kind of buried in the chat. So prepping for motherhood is 1, a pregnant advocate is 2, the grief is real is 3, and baby's here, who am I is the 4th group. They're all listed, but they're starting to get buried in the chat. So if you didn't see that already, just scroll up a little bit and write the one in there that you would like to join.
Great. So I'm going to go ahead and open the rooms, and then I'll keep adding people as we go so you guys can get started. Okay. Thank you.
Hey Stevie, can I ask a quick question? Are we leaving from that breakout room, or are we coming back together?
We're coming back together after this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Here. Okay, and then Morgan, I think I had you as prepping for motherhood. Okay, there we go. Thank you for your patience, Sarah Wolf. Okay, let's see, Victoria. Okay, and if you have not put this in, then let's see. I would say let's see. Motherhood. Hi, Jenny. Do you want to be in one of these? Okay, great. For all of you who are on Facebook Live, we are in breakouts now, getting everybody set up. So I would just ask that you hold tight and make sure next time that you RSVP, you can join in the discussion for our breakout groups. We have 4 breakout groups on prepping for motherhood, a pregnant advocate, the grief is real, and babies here, who am I? It's sure to be an important dialogue and conversation, and we will see you back here in just a few minutes. Thank you so much.
Stevie, you are fancy. I've never done that before.
Yes, I know. It's like, I love the ability that we can all be across the country and have the ability to come and connect in this way. It's
really cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's awesome because now we get, the really amazing part about WISE, I think I've shared this with you, that we're in 31 states and 5 countries now. And we have the ability to, reach out with experts across the country. Just being able to connect in this way is just really magical. And like I said, being able to do this with people like,
we'll put our contact info in.
It's amazing. Yeah. So it's just pretty wonderful and outstanding. I was really excited when I learned how to do that. So
that's awesome.
Well, great. Well, I'm so excited that to have all of you back. And I would love to offer the opportunity if anybody would like to put any of your key insights, anything that you want to share with the group, feel free to put it into the chat. If you have any information that you'd like to share with one another, make sure that you do that. I'm hoping that you maybe met someone or learned something new that you want to take back. And I would just really highly encourage you to go ahead and be that person that takes that next step to reach out to someone that maybe you hadn't met before. This is all about just, driving connections. And this is how we break down those taboos, right? It's how we really drive change with one another to help support each other. So that way for the next generation, we aren't worrying about what motherhood looks like and what it should be. And we're just starting to accept the fact that this is how it is. And we're accepting ourselves and showing up in the way that we are. We had a few things I just wanted to cover that were coming in on Facebook Live. There was a comment on debunking the snapback. And I love this. If you're on social media at all, when you talk about the snapback, we're talking about, the body snapback and this idea that as soon as you have a baby, it's supposed to look, you're supposed to be back, a month later in, bikini ready, right? And whatever that means is what it's, it's what the culture has determined to be. But I think that there's a lot of other things. Many of you know I worked on the Always Discreet brand for several years, and I can't say enough about it. Your body is going to go through a lot of things. 1 in 3 women have adult incontinence. Nobody talks about that. Fortunately, 1 in 8 are doing something about it now. Hopefully more people will openly talk about that, because it's not just for people who have given birth. It's about, what your just body does, and with the way that you're made and the way that things that happen to us. So I think that this is where we're really going to shift the culture to being open, honest, transparent, and being able to have really rich and real dialogue. I would love for Whitney, if you've got a few things that you wanted to share before I officially close us out.
Yes, thank you, Stevie. Just real quick, especially because we didn't get to really cover it in the Babies Here, Who Am I? But I actually am glad we didn't, because it's important for everyone to hear this. I suffered from postpartum depression, and I suffered only on my 3rd baby, not on my 1st and 2nd. So we really didn't get into that tonight, but when we talk about the postnatal experience, I want you to know something, especially during the pandemic times, and that is that postpartum depression is real. It's okay. It's common. It happens to a lot of women, and it is 100% okay to ask for help. Reach out to your girlfriends, your doctors, anybody that you need to say, you know what, I'm not okay. My experience, I felt suicidal thoughts, and I knew that wasn't right. And as soon as I felt them, I thought, you know what? I'm not in a good way. I need help. And I called my doctor's office and I got an appointment with a therapist. It happens. Our hormones are raging. We've been through a massive shift. And so I won't get into too much detail with that tonight, but I want you to know that if you experience anything like that, Dr. Salomon here with Galia Collaborative, she's got a brilliant program. She just partnered with Christ. We are here for you. You have issues, you want to DM me and just say, hey, I don't think I'm okay. I need to talk to somebody. Like, I will help you find someone. We are all here we have experienced this, and not everybody may have experienced PPD, but I know that some of us have, and you will be okay. Just make sure help is available and ask for it.
No, I love that. And thank you so much for sharing that, because I think that we at WISE are very, very proud of being able to help support that collaboration between the Christ Hospital and Galia Collaborative. It's just one of many ways that, we're really looking to partner with experts like Dr. Turner and Dr. Salomon, and being able to empower them to have the right connections to other small businesses and wellness businesses in our community, so they can refer their patients to people who have that additional expertise. And I think that that's the power of what this network can provide to anybody who has questions, anybody who you want to connect with the community, you want to learn more about something, or you want to share your motherhood story. I would highly encourage that you reach out to us at hello@wisewellnessguild.com, and we are happy to connect you to whoever you need. As a part of this, like I said, I will be providing a follow-up as a blog post, and it's going to include a lot of different resources for you to be able to tap into and go a little bit deeper on this topic, however you kind of found your way, all the way from how do I select a birthing center? I know that for me, I am very particular about the hotel that I stay in. So if I were giving birth, I would really care about what that looks like and feels like, and whether it's great. And if I am going to make a shameless plug, because literally I would eat off the floors in the Christ Hospital birthing center. It's so immaculate and beautiful. Like, I kind of want to stay a weekend. And I would say that there are a lot of other things in terms of mental health resources. Poppy's Corner is another one that I would say, not represented here, but very clear focus on serving the Black community and their families. And then I would say that there's a lot of different questions as people have around adoption, surrogacy, IVF, those things. You'll also see some resources in that capacity too. We do intend on continuing to do this, continuing to connect with one another. But if you do have interest in kind of connecting with other moms or experts regularly, please share that with us, because we are fluid and want to serve our community in any way that we can. We've been thinking about doing some smaller group sessions in the interim until Galia Collaborative does these incredible Thrive Circles, and the next infertility one, I believe, is coming up in the fall. So I will put that link in, but if you have a need to connect with a community and you want to plug in earlier, definitely let us know. Thank you so much for coming today. I'm so grateful for all of the panelists for your time. You are absolutely incredible. Your expertise is just so graciously, it's just so wonderful to have access to such incredible, relatable talent. And in particular, like I said, one of the key takeaways that I think I will forever remember is that, anytime you step into this, it's about relationships, and it's about understanding who you are as a person first and how you relate to yourself, to other people. It's just going to be incredibly important for you to do that work and be really kind of solid and confident in how you're feeling about yourself. And so I think that there's a lot of things that we create in our brains and our minds, especially during these really kind of crazy times of not just the pandemic, but life transitions. And I just am really grateful for everybody showing up here today, supporting each other, supporting yourself, and allowing for yourself to have this hour and a half to invest in yourself. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening. Go outside, get some fresh air. It's not raining here in Ohio right now, and we'll talk to you soon. All right. Have a good one. Thank you.